Welcome to the Smart Driving Cars podcast. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Easter to everybody. Happy spring, happy Passover, happy whatever you're celebrating right now. Happy.
Just be happy. And joining us is Stanley Young, the Mobility Systems Team Lead for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory's Center for Integrated Mobility Science. Great to see you again, Stan.
Nice to be here, Fred.
Well, Stan, you took part in this week's Smart Driving Car Summit session, really terrific, on what will power safely driven cars. This was a great session looking at the pros and cons of different fuel sources for vehicles going forward. Let's have your perspective on some of the key takeaways from that summit.
Yeah, I always appreciate participating in these because it draws me out of the research silos I'm in and gets me back to the top level to understand all the competing concerns that are really driving the issues forward. And that's what it provided for me, both internally to NREL when they were hosting that session and asked the key questions. I went around to my colleagues and tried to get a balanced perspective again of all the driving forces in the automotive electrification area, whether it's electrification or hydrogen or high efficiency vehicles or hybrids and things like that. And bringing that all together says, hey, the driving forces of these are much larger than I think about from day to day, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's energy security, global warming, you name it. There's a lot of things that are coming to bear. And they're all lining up to push us towards electrified drivetrains in some form or another. There's a lot of debate on whether that's full battery electric vehicles or hybrids and how the grid's going to be powered. But I don't think I hear any dissent whatsoever that getting to electrified drivetrains to enable regenerative braking or to enable alternative fuels of any sort is not the right way to go. We got a heck of a long way when you hear all the talk in the press, and 90% is all about electric vehicles or automated vehicles, and then you're brought back to reality when you look at the statistics that even today on the market, that's 2% or less of all vehicle sales. So it's an interesting dynamic that we're living in right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Stan. I mean, for a while, I wondered why the Chevy Volt never made it, because it just seemed to me that having something to generate electricity and then put it through a drivetrain that doesn't end up needing a transmission to be able to do what it needs to do just seemed to me to be fundamental to really moving along. I mean, maybe it's because I played in the freight railroad industry for a while,
Yeah.
and 25 years or something like that, whatever. But if you look at a locomotive, it's an electric drive, okay? Mm-hmm. But there aren't too many wires up there with pantographs picking up electricity. They have some big diesel, who knows what, generating this stuff, burning that diesel fuel to create then electricity with an electric drive. Why? Because, I mean, can you see how you would need not just 2-man crews, not 5-man crews. I mean, could you see them shifting the gears to try to put that? I mean, it would, you have 200 car coal train behind, and then you hit the Rockies. Holy, what the hell do you do? I mean, fundamentally, and it one surprises one that even in trucking and so on, there's still the transmission, and then you have an automatic transmission and why just not choose a thing that that puts the torque on the wheels to be different, right? And then the other sort of thing that got me is really having to do with with drones. For some reason, I don't know, maybe I was at the University of South Carolina. I was someplace, and somebody showed me a Black Hawk helicopter, and they had the side of the Black Hawk taken out with the whole drive thing that goes to the rotor in the back and so on, and all these whatever's huge, sort of drive trains that come out of this turbine. That's, I'm thinking, holy hell, you just put a little electric motor back there. Do. I mean, and if I'm, Al Qaeda, I know what to shoot for. That whole drive train. I don't shoot for the blades. I just shoot for the drive train. Boom, boom, boom. That stuff. I mean, what am I missing here? It just seems to me that fundamentally, because of the torque curve associated with electric motors, that you would want to be there. And I always surprised me that, the volt, to me was, I never took one apart or really looked at it, but it seemed like you have a little gasoline engine, a little efficient engine. It sort of creates these electrons, and then you use the electrons to doom. Right? That's what you're talking about.
I agree. I mean, if I were to pick up a vehicle to say, hey, this is kind of the turning point, the Chevy Bolt was definitely one of those that I would pick up. I shared yesterday that my undergraduate alma mater was R.G. Letourneau, and he figured that out for huge earth moving equipment. You see in mines and stuff. And I mean, even though that was, after World War II and there were still electronic limitations, he fully understood the torque, the torque benefit. His dump trucks, even though they maxed out at 30 miles an hour, could do that uphill at 20% grades because of the
torque curve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you didn't have to sit there and shift a super low gear. I mean, just think how many pop clutches you would have to do to be able to. I mean, if I was 16, I'd be great doing it. The girls would go, yeah.
Well, what hit me is I've always wondered why we didn't have more trucks that were like that similar drivetrain, just to get that. In reality, very little equipment needs that level, and the price of gas, and even though with the complexity of the mechanical drivetrains, they were just less expensive to produce. I was kind of caught flat-footed yesterday about whether our policies incentives for EVs were effective, and the more I think about it, the more I go, yeah. I mean, what really has prevented that architecture from taking place? It was electric storage technology.
Yeah.
Practical high capacity batteries, we're still on that route. We still have, I think we have, anything light duty, we have viable alternatives now that can compete with the ICE drivetrain moving forward. And it took, no matter what you think about Elon, he showed the world that these can be sexy, fast, and desirable vehicles to drive, and it's moving out of the bag and moving forward. And the introduction of the Ford Mach 1E, I think is what they call it. It's like there is an icon of American culture with an electrical equivalent. I'm more interested not in the performance of that, but on the reaction of the American culture in general. That if a Corvette gets out there with a full electric drivetrain, or the equivalent coming from the Mopar world, it'll be interesting to see how the psyche reacts from our very much ICE dominated view of the world for transportation and mobility. So.
Well, Adam Jones from Morgan Stanley really had some comments about the
but before we get Fred, before we get to that, we'll get to that. But let me just follow up on that because in some sense you can almost see the evolution of the American psyche, because you no longer have the double clutching 4 on the floor, on the stick, whatever. Mm-hmm. Even in the Ford F-150s, they're now all in their crew cabs. And I mean, you go in one and you think you're, holy hell, I'm in my Mercedes. What the hell's going on here? I mean, geez, why am I buying a Mercedes? I'm going out and buying Ford F-150, the torque and the acceleration that you get out of one of these electric motors, all of a sudden, these guys are going to go nuts. They're going to go nuts. And they're going to go out there and they'll compete with Elon's whatever truck that they do, and they're going to be lining up, I think, because it's really going to fit in. I mean, when you actually look at that torque curve, and you look at that torque curve at zero and so on, and with the acceleration that gives you, and if any of those guys ever got in the Tesla and somebody in the Tesla just went out and what the hell did you just do? I mean, I don't know. I think so. And so the motivation here, I mean, and you hit the nail on the head with the battery. I've for a while, I've also been saying to my class, the fundamental problem's been the battery, going back to 1837, wherever you want to go back to with batteries. I mean, there was just not very much advancement in batteries, okay, until we got to the lithium piece. And then all of a sudden, my goodness, and rechargeable and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, but you still have sitting out there the volt concept, in which you could put a very efficient IC engine in there, really small, really efficient, that just sits there and grinds out and creates electrons at just this constant rate. You don't have to, no transmission, because hey, you set that up at the efficiency level to generate the electricity, and then you sit there and just temporarily store. You still need a temporary storage thing, not a big one. And then all of a sudden, boom! And it seems to me to be simple. And, certainly one of Elon's fundamentals is simplicity. If I can do it in half the parts, do it. If I can, and we didn't get into it yesterday. We did get into it the day before with respect to all of a sudden these electric vehicles coming out and half the parts, a quarter of the parts, as opposed to an internal combustion, boom, all of a sudden, the assembly line looks like nothing but the boom, right? I mean,
that was a major theme, and the complexity argument resonates with me, but I'm not anywhere near manufacturing. And also the theme came out that, guys, once we have a fundamentally electric drivetrain, kind of with the Chevy Volt, our freedom to redesign, whether it's ICEs or other e-fuels or combustion cycles, saying, hey, let's just maximize the efficiency within a very narrow RPM torque range, and see if we can push some of this fundamental energy conversion up into the 50s, 60s%. That caught my attention, and that's well beyond my technical capacity to comment on, but it's starting to turn saying, hey, we can fundamentally make electric drivetrains now, just like we used to, that we continue to do with locomotives and some of the other examples. And how does that change the equation long term? I think in the back of everyone's head saying, okay, it's possible, should we go that direction? Is the electrical supply chain going to be as resilient as the petroleum supply chain?
Yeah.
And what do you want to bet on? And should we be building platforms and chassis that have some inherent resiliency, so you can take electrons or take petroleum or something else, or should we just build that resiliency into our supply chains? All good questions. So.
Yeah, all good questions, and they all have to sit on top of the research, because that's gonna push the research. I mean, you do the research to be able to, with some vision as to what the hell you're trying to do. Yeah, we all want to do basic research, and we don't care, use it or lose it, whatever. But that's I'd say somewhat irresponsible, if not wholly irresponsible. But out here with these major forces to play. And then, okay, Fred, what about what Adam said about the tailpipe?
Well, he said, Steve, that Apple in no way is going to have a tailpipe on anything that they make. But beyond that, he seemed to be saying that this was a cultural shift, that the automakers are on board, having meetings every day, worried about Tesla, and that the public sentiment has shifted. And certainly, I mean, the government push now, it just seems like there doesn't seem to be another option on the table almost. Did
Well, I
you
don't know about
did,
it.
did you
Alan,
did you get did
I
you
wanted
get
to
that
ask you a
sense?
question.
Sure, sure.
The performance of automotive companies in one way can be measured by the number of units they sell, and another measure by their stock price. And, I don't see any mainstream automaker lacking for sales right now unless they have some inherent
Yeah, right.
capabilities.
People are buying them off the shelf.
If they're comparing stock prices and saying, hey, we want to be like Tesla and have just an outrageously large price compared to earnings, I don't know. Do you really want to be in that situation?
Obviously, you want to be selling cars, but for whatever reason, and there are probably multiple reasons, most of the automakers have been announcing, "Hey, we're going pretty much all electric."
Yeah, well,
In the coming years here.
selling cars to consumers has been, the realm of Madison Avenue, the madmen, creating visions, reflecting on some fundamental individual desires, uh, passions, whatever, dreams, and it seems, at least it seems to me, that even high tech, even the oil companies are seeing that, in fact, the environmental thing is not a crazy thing, and it's been rooted in the grade schools and the kindergartens and the second grades and so on now for 10 to 15, getting on 20 years. And those folks are entering the 20s and the 30s age brackets, in which they finally are going to have some money to spend and so on that they have. And the whole marketplace is saying, my goodness, we can't, we're not selling cigarettes anymore. Okay. We're not doing that. This thing is sort of fundamental in the grassroots, and they're jumping on board. And when Adam says, and I believe him, Apple will not sell a product with a tailpipe. Okay, that's because the whole environmental, save the planet, everything, smoking kills. Part of that they don't want to be associated with, and Cook doesn't. He doesn't. And if the CEO from the top has any influence, that. And Microsoft doesn't. And Jeff doesn't. Because Jeff comes from Princeton. Of course he wouldn't. I mean, but whatever, But no, he doesn't. He's got enough problems. He's got problems with unions and things like that. I mean, what did he do? He jumped to he said everybody gets $15. What? 9 months ago, whatever, and he didn't do that. He just, I think it's because, he has a good product and he doesn't want this little garbage little thing ruining it. And it doesn't, and all of a sudden he becomes green. I mean, he wants to get stuff to us for free. He says, and man, I bought in. I get free stuff here at the house. I mean, it comes free. I mean, I'm like, I can't stop being on Amazon buying stuff. I get presents every day when the Amazon truck shows up. It's like Christmas. And to make it actually free, because right now when he looks at his balance sheet, that is a substantial amount of money he's spending. And talk about the difficulties of logistics and getting people to, drive and all that stuff. He's got to be working on. And what he signed with Rivian, a year, 2 years ago, saying, build me some electric vans. I don't know who you guys are, but build me vans, because you guys are saying we're going to, 3 years from now, every package arriving at any of our homes is going to be in an electric van from Amazon, without a doubt. Because the incremental cost for him to do that is probably zero. And again, he doesn't want to have to deal with all the headaches that would be on top of it. These things have tailpipes. And as I like to argue, if he figures out that, half of this stuff is fine if it shows up and when I wake up in the morning, it's on my front door, and he can deliver it between midnight and 6 a.m. when nobody's using the streets, he's going to have driverless vehicles out here because it's almost trivial to do when there aren't children running around. And of course, his costs are going to go tuned to this. I mean, you get to talk the talk and walk the walk. I mean, if you're in business, I mean, you can't find anything better than that.
There's a talk around NREL that the economic equation is always tested out in fleet management, whether that's Jeff or whether that's a city fleet. They look at return on investment over a number of years. They're decisions based on what individual decisions are. Does it reflect my personality? Do I like the color?
Yeah.
Which I don't want to belittle those. Those are individual decisions one at a time, or when you aggregate it to a fleet, it's typically bottom line. And massive fleet, right now we're seeing fleet customers consider that transition, seriously consider what's the long-term return on investment to go to electrified drivetrains or battery electric vehicles or something on that order. And I think we're seeing the early adopters do it. Ultimately, as a data person and as an engineer, it says, are we actually moving the needle on what the concerns are, whether it's GHG or air quality and things like that? And there was some discussion yesterday. So you buy a battery electric vehicle, the grid's so dirty, in balance, it's worse than a gasoline.
Yeah, you're burning coal. I mean, the marginal energy is coal.
Right.
In most places, maybe not Sweden, the marginal energy is coal. So you convert from this to this, guess what you use? You use what's on the margin, right? So you buy a Tesla today, you burn coal, period. I mean, I think in any analytic construct, that's what you get.
Well, will that translate enough into, say, Apple puts out a car without a tailpipe, and then someone says, "Hey, what good does it do, Apple, if the state you're marketing in is still 50% coal-based electric grid?" Are they going to turn around and get more either fundamental consumer activism or pressure from the industry saying, "Hey, we got to get this grid into shape and modernized and as flexible and efficient as possible"? It remains to be seen if it translates to that. But you see, I call it industry activism when a poor political decision or something that doesn't seem fair, and then the business or the major industry headquartered in that state or municipality, they got to protect their reputation, and where they come down on that side of the issue is balanced in public opinion and ultimately hits their bottom line. So it's just an interesting. Facts. The reality is more interesting than the fiction at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would think that if I were sitting there, I'd say, look, I did my part. I don't control the coal mines. I don't control the grid. I can't. And, if those guys and those gals went out and did their part, then we're good. I've done my part. Now that's covered my own butt. Everybody covers their own butt, but at least I'm trying to cover my own butt. Okay, you can't come to me and, hey, we got rid of coal and we now have nothing but wind and we're all good and we got all this stuff and you still have a tailpipe. I mean, I would suggest I do not want to be there. I don't want to have that discussion. I can't. If I'm in any kind of power to direct anything, right, Stan? I mean, talk to me here. It's only natural now, an individual and whatever and so on. And guess what? That's the way the whole terminology has been set up. Okay. Why? Because I guess everybody wants to just protect their own little corner. And I guess you deal what you can deal with. Can't deal with the whole darn thing. Love to tell you what to do, Stan. I would love to be able to tell you what to do. But of course I can. I can barely tell myself what to do. I mean,
We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more. But first, this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more info, head to motoetf.com. On the website, we should point out it's a good idea to read the white paper. It's called The Smart Transportation Revolution. It's under the Insights and News tab. Lots of great information there to help you make informed decisions about investing. ETFs, as you may know, can be a smart way to spread risk with investments and focus on a particular category of stocks. The site, once again, is motoetf.com. We're back with more on the Smart Driving Cars podcast and our guest, Stan Young. This week, Stan, President Biden unveiled a $2 trillion infrastructure plan. There's a lot here, obviously, with $2 trillion, but anything that's grabbed your attention?
Coming with this new administration, we all anticipated a greater influence on sustainability and equity and many of the other things. It was just a matter of to what extent and how fast it would come. I admit I'm surprised the speed with which it's coming out and the focus. It's just now starting to hit. We're watching of course, we're a research institute, so we live off of grant funds and FOAs, and we're seeing language in each one coming out that needs to address environmental justice and equity. We're seeing the announcements for infrastructure plans. A lot of that includes EV charging, as well as traditional infrastructure of keeping the roads and bridges in place. I guess it doesn't surprise me. Maybe I'm just getting old and change surprises me and catches me off guard. We were anticipating this, and now it's getting into full swing. So.
I mean, the infrastructure thing, 2 trillion, but there's a lot more than just infrastructure in there that sort of has that. Probably there should be more in with respect to the electric infrastructure, the electric grid, and so on. I mean, that's you keep looking at, to me, you look at those Lawrence Livermore energy flow charts. You just need to take a look at those to see, in terms of the volume on a national basis, where does it come from? Where does it go? How does it get, the gray areas where it gets converted into just heat and waste, and you say to yourself, geez, it really focuses your attention on the efficiency question and what drives those things. But in the end, certainly the key thing, as we mentioned yesterday with respect to mobility, if I'm moving, I need energy where I am at that particular time so that I can keep moving. Unless I'm going downhill, of course, but then I'm going to have to come uphill later, so I'm going to need it there. And the distribution, how you get it to where you need it, is a key element of it. And if I happen to be on the ground, I have some things that I can do. If I'm up in the air, if I'm dealing with airplanes and so on, man, I have a challenge there, and I have a real challenge. And so, the pointing this out and making sure, and then looking at where's this going to come from? Where's it been coming from? How much change have we made lately, even with all of the things that we've talked about and all the investments we've made up to this point? We haven't moved the needle very much so far. So, there's a real need. And then if you get down to the roadway infrastructure, I think, going back and forth on some emails yesterday, having to do, 80 billion a year or something to maintain or whatever the roadways. And I sort of went through, I did the 80E to 09, divided by, 200 E06, like, 200 million or whatever vehicles or drivers out there. What the heck does that mean? It comes down, it's 2.5 cents a vehicle mile. Is what the expense. You mean we can really maintain and upgrade our road infrastructure at 2.5 cents a vehicle mile? I mean, or did I make some mistake in the exponents here and then the zeros? I must have missed something, but if it really is 2.5 cents per vehicle, you mean we can't afford that? We can't pay that? We can't find the money? That all of a sudden there's some enormous tax increase? I mean, can't be. 2.5 cents, it'd be cheap, as I put in an email, it'd be cheap at twice the price. Really? Come on. I
wonder if you can get elected like that, Alan. Come on.
Well, no, of course I can't. But somebody, really? If
Well,
you look,
you
if
mentioned
you look at
something
what we,
there.
go ahead, go, yeah,
Well,
go.
in a past life, I was a pavement management engineer for the state of Kansas. And if you look at what are the US's fundamental economic strengths, of course, agriculture is right at the top, technology's at the top. The fact that we have to scale infrastructure over such vast geographic areas, being able to keep a road system in good repair, all that asphalt, concrete, bridge work and structures on a ever decreasing tax base because the gas tax hasn't changed and inflation just keeps eating into it, has really made the US probably the leader in what you said, 2.5 cents per mile or something to keep the whole road infrastructure in base. And it's I think it's an untold story, but it's something
Marvelous
that the
if we
US
can
has.
do it,
Yeah.
if we can do it that efficiently. Think about it. What are we doing? Are we using slave labor, prisoner labor out there to do that? How in the hell do we do that cheaply? And it's not a tax. It's a use charge. Okay. I go
Well,
buy
there's
gasoline to use my car so that I can hit the gas and accelerate and get all kinds of, thrills and do donuts and all that stuff. But I need a surface. And nobody's sitting out there and saying, okay, you want to use a surface, pay something. Okay. 2.5 cents a mile is all that I have to pay for that service. You're joking. Here, I mean, come on. I'll give you more. Come on, now, come on. You can't be that cheap. You've got to be kidding me. Why isn't it presented that way? Why is it presented as a tax?
I think it's a psychology.
It's not a tax.
When we pay for it through the pump, it's small incremental bits.
Yeah.
How much we buy. It's really a use tax that's applied.
It's a use charge, not a tax. It's a use charge. But somebody put a tax name on it, and then politics. I can't raise taxes. Oh my goodness, I'm a Democrat. I can't raise tax, or I'm a Republican, or I'm a gun toting. I don't know what. I can't raise taxes. I mean, it's a use charge. You don't want to use the roads. Hey, you don't have to.
As we get ever increasing in fuel efficiency and get away from petroleum-based fuels, how do you recreate that dynamic that, it's whether you use a tax or a use charge, it's an incremental, we get a heck of a lot of value out of that.
You get value. So why isn't that put up there as, hey, you want value? 2.5 cents a mile. Holy hell, here, I'll give you 5 cents a mile. Give me some paint on it, okay? Fill a pothole. Fill another pothole. I'll double it. I mean, am I just a rich guy? Am I a a 1%er or something? Or really, I mean, how could it be any cheaper?
Mm-hmm.
You got to be kidding. A hard surface that I'm not going to get stuck in the mud. I mean, can't get out there and push, dig it out for 2.5. I mean, you got to be joking. What else is that cheap? They charge me more for water. I go buy a water at the airport. I go to my hotel room. There's a water. It says you drink this. It's $5. Talk to me.
I think a way to look at this every few years, I run this calculation of I like the term Commonwealth that Virginia uses, and one of the nation's Commonwealth is our road infrastructure system. So if you take the total lane miles of either freeways, interstate, state highways, and divide it by the population, how much linear feet of roadway do we all collectively own and have to keep up to date? And when you think about it that way, and actually get those numbers in front of you, it's quite amazing how our collective national or statewide
I would suspect
or I pay for about a mile or two worth of road just out of what I support is. I can't.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I guess the number is probably 10 million lane miles or something like that. Maybe it's greater if it's 10 million lane miles, or there are 300 million of us. That means that basically I'm picking up for like a third of a mile or something like that. Or I mean,
A little bit less than that.
Less than one.
Don't push me to do math in my head.
No, but you know, but you're right. There is a substantial amount of roadway. There's probably more than 10 million lane miles if you take lane miles, and I bet there's close to. We'll have to go through that. You probably can look it up. Lane mile. It's a tough one to do because it's probably not going to include Cleveland Lane out here in the front of the house and so on. But I need that hard surface in the front of the house. Otherwise I get stuck in the mud before I even get anywhere. So damn it, I really want, and I don't want potholes on that sucker.
Does there need to be a fundamental change in the way we pay for the roads if the gasoline taxes start to wane as we have to stop.
We have to stop calling it a tax, and we have to call it a charge.
I mean, do we need to put this charge on an easy pass or something, Alan? Something along those lines?
Or on your meter, on your electric meter, or Stan. If you guys want to promote, electric cars. Okay, right now you get some money back on your taxes if you buy an electric car, and you don't pay any of this gas tax or gas use charge. Okay, and which is driving a bunch of people nuts. So they want to put a vehicle mile tax on your, so that the electric cars, there are only 1% or 2% of them out there, but let's get them now, okay, to pay. So we're going to put in a whole infrastructure to go collect money on a per mile basis out of these things. Yet we are sending money to them to promote it. So why not just say, electric cars, don't pay the road use tax. That's how we promote you. We'll pick that up. And in fact, instead of like doing transfer of money here, transfer of money there, who knows how many accountants you need, computer systems, whatever, Amazon Web Services that do all that. You just hold the money as government. Okay. And now you pass that out to the states and whatever to pay for the roadways. We've decided that this is a common good. And it is so good for industry, for business, for individuals, and so on, that in fact, collectively, we really are going to maintain this road system. So the 80 billion that we're putting out there in the stimulus thing is really, really good government. Okay, because in fact, this is for right now. Essentially, everybody drives. I know not everybody drives, and that's why I want to do driverless vehicles and all that kind of stuff. But predominantly, and this is a common good. This is a utility. It has enormous efficiencies because it can be spread over everybody. Let's continue to take advantage of that and say, yeah, okay, corporations have to pay a couple more %. You're not in business as a corporation if the roads aren't there. This is a fundamental good of you. You should be, can't give you enough.
I looked up that number from Google, and it was about a little over 70 million lane miles. So you're right. It's about a fifth or a quarter of a mile per person. So
yeah,
to think about it. And I'm sure there's going to be some bright young person that's going to figure out a way to charge it based on value of the roadway and be the next billionaire. But the gas tax was a great surrogate for that value-based use charge. I think it's getting outdated, and we're going to have to bring something else in to keep that up and keep our the most enviable road system in the world, that, in my opinion. But yeah, other people would argue that, but it is definitely allows for incredible mobility. I think I went up. Anyone needs to go up and see the Ford Museum, and his view of the world was physical mobility is one incredible aspect of freedom that we don't ever want to lose.
Absolutely, and it should be, and it probably is a public good, and it is a user charge. And when everybody had to consume gasoline or a fluid to do that, then the elegance of the user charge that is called gas tax, the elegance of that, collected at the wholesale level. Okay, so they only go to a few people to collect it from, that they are then forced to go collect it from each of us, for which it's really tough to get money out of here. Believe I'm here throwing it away, but it is really tough to get money out of there, right? You know, and having it done there, and having it auditable within a few big places. Sure, there's some people that say, hey, I'm going to use this for on my farm. I'm not in there. I won't pay. Yeah, you know, that's 0.000% of the damn thing. And to collect it like that, really elegant, proportional to how efficiently you use it, and efficient, you know, the heavier, if you're a Hummer, man, you get 12 miles a gallon. Man, charge that sucker. You have to pay me. If I'm a little Prius, I barely not much. But, you know, think of the fundamental incentive. I mean, you can't come up with a more elegant way to charge people for this, I claim. Okay. Now, if we're not going to use the fluids anymore, we got to figure out, I mean, you know, we got to figure out different, but then you say the hell with it. You know, when you really look at it, 80 billion, if that really is, and call it 100 billion, if that really is the number that the system needs to stay in good condition and move along, not to completely redo it and do some who knows what. Damn it, to me, that seems like that is such a small charge.
Okay, can I change the subject, Johnny, a little bit, Alan?
Yeah, sure.
We do a lot of behavioral research at the lab. You know, why do people travel? How is that changing? And the COVID pandemic was an incredibly interesting, from the point of view to our mobility shifts and what is going to be, you know, what's not going to fully rebound and why. Mm-hmm. I mean, just us sitting here as an example of, we're carrying on a webinar. The telepresence world, you know, you couldn't have accelerated it any faster.
Right.
Absolutely. And we're having conversations internally just to our work saying, are we going back to a 5-day at the office or not? And you know, there's an interesting mix on that. If you look at the economy, for the most part, has rebounded in many areas. But if you look at the VMT, there's definitely a 10 to 20% downturn. Whether you relate it to economy or behavioral shifts, I know, you know, if this continues, I need to go to my insurance company and ask for a discount on my insurance, because I'm just not putting, you know, my commute vehicle's been sitting in the driveway for a year and it's not moving. The school situation, you got to look at that. You know, a lot of people don't like it, but it was a 1-year experiment on what distance learning or fully webinar-based learning is all about. And we've gained, you know, we've learned a heck of a lot. We've instituted a heck of a lot. Is any of that going to remain permanent? Or are we going to go back to the way it was before? And how does that change in the mobility equation? There's a heck of a lot of discussion about equity across the board. You know, the people who had to show up to work because their work required it, whether it was the medical community or services or whatever, you know, is that distribution of travel, of commute, now getting a bit skewed because there's a sector, a lot of it correlated with wage earning jobs that have to show up to do their job versus you know, knowledge workers that have the ability. You know, have you guys been thinking about that with respect to the economic realm?
Well, we've certainly been thinking about it, you know, and trying to think about running numbers on it, and certainly looking at the INRIX data, which is, I mean, having INRIX out there have you know, segment volumes as a function of time, geographically across the country during even starting before the pandemic, during the pandemic, coming out. The availability of just hard data on what this is really fundamentally valuable. I think it hits different sectors. The professional sectors us, okay? We don't have to go to the office, okay? But the lower sectors of the blue collar workers, they don't have the ability to do the work on it. If they had the ability to do the work on a computer is already doing it and they wouldn't have the job. The only reason they're there is because of, it's an industrial revolution thing. It's, we could put ourselves back in Pittsburgh in 1900 and the steel mills or whatever. You had to have the people there or the people on the Ford assembly line and so on. Okay. And the thing is that those of us that work with this, then we don't need to be there. Now, certainly what that means for the classic commute, mass transportation, and so on that we've seen in the past, I think we have to rethink the whole transit equation. Okay, people running. Why would Goldman Sachs rent a whole building of office space in Lower Manhattan when all those folks? When all the Adam Jonases, he's not at Goldman Sachs, can do it from Westchester and do it essentially equally well. School, I have to be in the classroom. This has sucked. Okay, we've done a great job. There are little things that we've been able to do. I've had, guest speakers. I'm going to have Jamie Unknown, the CEO of eBay, in my class on the 19th. He's going to chat with my students. We can do that because we have this enormous benefit. Okay, so therefore we can really enhance being in the classroom because I can bring Jamie in 3 years from now again if he's willing to do it. Okay, okay, or we can have Stan in there, because you don't have to get an airplane, come to Princeton. I have to take you to lunch, and all that crap. Okay, so that piece of it can be real, but the lack of face to face with the students. I don't know if they learned anything.
I'd like to see I know the airlines are still hurting, but they're beginning to rebound.
Right. The New York Times today. Yeah. Yeah.
And which sector is rebounding? Is business travel going to stay depressed simply because we discovered we can be as productive or close
absolutely
to that versus leisure travel is rebounding faster because you really want to be in Hawaii or the Rockies or something like that.
Absolutely.
Study. One last thing,
I can go skiing at Vail and still do my job.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Zoom, what do they call it? Zoomcation or something like that. Zoomcation. Okay. Think of what that allows you to do. If you have an individual who's well motivated and wants to do his or her job at that particular point in time, they don't have to be in the office. They can in some sense have their cake and eat it too.
One last point. You saw the numbers come out of FHWA for the fatalities in 2020. They jumped tremendously. I think if I remember right, 42,000, and we were hovering in the mid 30s.
Yeah, I think per VMT, it's like 25% increase. The number is horrendous. Go ahead, go.
Well, we're all trying to tackle congestion to save energy. And when I saw those numbers, my mind just immediately jumped. It's like congestion saves lives, folks.
I think you said it. You said it yesterday. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Anybody who goes and says, I want to invest in infrastructure for safety reasons, and I'm going to reduce congestion, is talking two sides out of their mouth. No. Okay. If you're talking about safety, don't reduce congestion. Okay. You want to do safety, you can put speed limiters in there, you can do other things, you can whatever, but man, don't reduce congestion. Go.
Well, it's congestion is the, removes the volatility out of traffic, slows everybody down. And if nothing else, this COVID pandemic just put a huge exclamation part about, safety is about speed volatility, folks. What you got to understand that. And in some ways, congestion, even though it's a curse on productivity, is a blessing in the safety realm. So,
absolutely, Alan, we've talked before about using technology to do that, and I think you just mentioned it too. Yeah, it could be done in other ways besides congestion if enough cars had it.
Right, as I've begun to say, and this number is quoted about human involvement. 90% of crashes has human involvement, and you used to call them accidents. At least we call them crashes now. And I say it's not human involvement; it's human misbehavior. It's human. We're supposed to behave in a certain way. This is what the rules of the road. This is what driving. We're supposed to behave. And anytime we start behaving in different ways, boom, that's what causes stuff. So if technology can come in there and either keep us from misbehaving, or allows us to only misbehave when nothing bad is going to happen, then we should be buying all of that. Okay, so it's okay for me to cross a double line if there's nobody coming the other way. And the technology should know that. It shouldn't just say, don't cross a double line, Alan. If it tells you that too often, I'll cut the wire. I'm not going to sit there. Why shouldn't I be able to cross? There's nobody coming. But if there's somebody coming, that sucker should not let me cross the double line. Okay? Now, when the technology becomes that good, okay, now I don't know, to get it that good so I can have another drink, it has to be driverless. It has to be able to actually not require disengagement or fail from the watering hole to my bedroom. Has to do the whole thing. Otherwise, I die. Okay. And that's a heavy lift. Okay, that's a heavy lift.
Well, on that note, we've got to wrap things. We really want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. Terrific.
It was enjoyable. Thanks for the invitation, Fred and Alan.
I don't know. People are going to go nuts watching this, but look, I think these are very fundamental and important things. We put them in light so that we get the concept across, because if you put too many details in there, people just, I do, whatever. But if it hits home, and hopefully we've been able to hit home on a couple of these things, Stan and Fred, then maybe we move the ball forward a little bit.
That's the goal. A reminder that there are still a couple of sessions left in the Princeton Smart Driving Cars Summit. Keep an eye out for the schedule. Thursday, live at noon. You can find the schedule at smartdrivingcar.com. Thursday, noon, and it's live. Thanks to our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO, and more information is available at motoetf.com. You can find us once again at smartdrivingcar.com. Also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, Amazon, SoundCloud, the list goes on. And you can get your smart speaker to play us too. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching, and please continue to stay safe.
And happy Easter, Passover, spring, whatever to everybody. Enjoy and stay safe. Thanks.